program in the state, and we had to charge our residents, and they couldn't understand, we're going to give you a commodity that the collector is going to pick up and go sell, and I got to pay you to do that. Well, what it costs to provide that service, the material that you sell doesn't pay for the cost of providing the service, but it's the right thing to do. Right. It comes down to recycling is the right thing to do, and there's a cost associated. Who bears the burden of that cost? Whether it's fair or unfair, or whether it's equal or not equal, that's for another debate. That's not mine.
I understand Boudreaux's point now because of the fact that it's going to be manned and there's a cost associated with it, and it is coming out of the city's coffer, you know. So, have we thought about? No, I ain't even gonna make that comment. Okay, that's all I have to say about this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bellard?
Yeah, real quick, it's the current waste contract we have changing with this contract, or is it just renewing it? Meaning, is there going to be anything different? Can you buy a second can if you want, of the services that have always been provided staying the same?
I think all the provisions of the contract remain intact, except the fact that the computation will have a floor and a ceiling on maximum loss or maximum gain.
Other than that, everything pretty much stayed the same. But there's nothing hidden in here.
I think that's all the same. Yeah, everything else was the same.
Thank you.
Ms. Cook?
I pressed that button so long ago, I kind of forgot my question, but actually it was, Mr. Nakhan kind of answered it, actually asked the question and answered it as well, but the contracts, we have a contract with the city residents is what we're talking about right now. I mean, might not be a good question as far as if it's feasible, but is it possible to have two separate contracts, one for the city and then one for the unincorporated areas, so that they're pretty independent contracts of each other for a curb service? Or
could you do it? Yeah, you could.
It would be expensive?
I don't know that would be recommended or advised.
Okay, well, okay.
I mean, it could be done,
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm listening to the comments about the city not, having to pay for the unincorporated areas, and so if we would separate the two contracts, but it would not maybe be so feasible for the unincorporated areas in terms of the amount of the contract. It would be
their cost would be a lot higher, I would assume, than the incorporated area.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Mr. Boudreaux?
Thank you. I think we're all on the same page now. I think it might have been like a missed point, and Annette just kind of brought it a little bit more to light. Basically, what I was saying is that we have a contract that affords everybody in the parish to do something. It led to, we need to understand who is paying. But at the end of the day, the benefit that I appreciate is that the unincorporated residents have an option. And then all the municipalities, I don't know if all of our municipalities have a recyclable now, but I know Scott Broussard does, Youngsville does. So if all the municipalities are recycling and our unincorporated area has an option, and then of course we got the city of Lafayette, that means the entire parish is recyclable. Now, everybody has to work on teaching and understanding so we could make sure that everybody's participating. But my point initially was just to point out that we have a contract that everyone can participate at one level or another, and the contract's design is based on, the payment that our contract is receiving, and obviously the recommendation of the parish president was we was able to take care of the unincorporated area as well. So I think we good there. In addition to that, Mr. Terrio asked earlier about the penalty, and I think it went off somewhere else, but I want to just be clear, because that is an issue with all types of stuff. Penalties are based on pickups based on households, correct? That in this contract, if they do not pick up the recyclables, and that is reported and verified, there is a penalty for that back to the contractor. Simple as that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when the percentages and other things came out, they don't have to miss so many people or miss so often and all of that. If they miss you, you report it, it's verified by your department, by your division, and the clock starts to tick. If they don't correct the matter within the timeline, I think it's 24 hours. Right. They're fined.
They're given the contractor's due process.
Okay.
They're notified that they missed the collection, get it in 24 hours, or the
Right.
penalty applies.
Right, I just wanted to make sure people knew that. And the last thing, and this might be a question for you, Bobby, the service, are we talking rear load or are we talking automation on recycling?
Automated.
Okay.
It's going to be automated, it's the same type of service as a
So it's
solid
going to be
waste.
side truck?
Yeah, and in
Side-
fact,
side
in the material that's going to be put out, they're suggesting that they put the carts 4 feet apart. Actually, put the carts 4 feet away from any other object, because remember that arm has to come in and grab it. So people continue to put their carts close together. We got to give them enough space to be able to pick up both, and it's going to be a separate truck. The trucks may look identical. In some cases, the truck, in this, I don't want the public to be concerned about it. They may see one truck pick up solid waste one day, and the next time it picks up recycling. It can be the same truck, and that's one of the benefits of putting the two contracts together with one contractor. When a garbage truck is emptied, it has like a shotgun barrel effect. It pushes all the garbage out. There's no garbage that remains in there, so it's not contaminated if you're going to use it for recyclable material. So it can be done, and it's done on a regular basis. So it's going to be the same type of truck, automated, same type of service, on the same day.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreaux. Mr. Lewis.
Okay, yes, Mr. Bobby, you talk about, well, I think Mr. Popa as well, talk about a penalty for not picking up your cans and bringing it back to your house. Is there a penalty for putting too much trash in the can, and when they pick them up with the arms, trash just fall out all over and goes onto the street? I've been getting a lot of calls with that, and I'm
No,
just...
sir. What are you saying, the citizen overloads the cart?
Yes, yes.
No, sir, unless a mess is made on the ground from the fallout, if you will, and then if it's bad enough, our environmental division would notify the property owner that you have debris on property. But as Mr. Carroll said, we would much rather work with people than penalize people. We're gonna counsel those people and do our best to contact them before we apply a penalty. That's always the last resort, a penalty.
Okay, I understand that, but I had a few calls about some cans are overfull, and
Yes,
whenever the trash is being picked up, going into the truck, is trash all over on the...
And if you think about it, our rules have always been container in the front with the lid closed. And when these solid waste containers are overfull.
Right.
And their driver does their best to empty it, and as they go to bring that thing overhead, the physics of it means that overflow starts falling out onto the ground. And who gets blamed? Our contractor. So that's not really fair. Again, we'd much rather work with those people who are overloading that cart and encourage them not to do that rather than, penalize them. But they do, as Mr. Boudreaux said, they have to be educated.
Yeah.
And we do our best to do that.
Okay, and how far the cans should be apart? You say something about how many inches or a foot from the recycle and the trash can?
4 feet.
4 feet. Now, there are some residents that property are real narrow. So how will that work? Because now they are being picked up trash on one day, and a couple of days later, here comes the recycle. Now they put them together on a 40-foot lot in a mailbox, and how will that work for the residents that have narrow lots that may not have the room or the space to put?
It shouldn't be a problem, because you only maybe 2 feet for the cart, for each cart. That's 4 feet plus 4 feet in the middle. We're talking about 8 feet. If it's a 40-foot lot, you got room, so shouldn't be an issue.
Well, I agree with you, but then I'm thinking about some cases where there's the mailbox and there's a ditch, open ditch, and there's a lot of other, things that be into play. A car might be parked on the side or something that nature. So I'm just concerned. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The cars parked is
Yeah.
an issue. If we can't get to it, we have to have access to it.
Right, I understand.
No different than a commercial dumpster. You have to have access to it. If we can't get to it, we can't dump it.
Right.
Now, we make every effort to identify those problem areas, and I'm going to tell you, I'll just use this as an example. One big problem area is around campus. You can imagine the kids
Right,
go to school and they'll park everywhere, and some residents, when they leave, there's no one parked there, the garbage can's out there. By the time our truck comes around, there's 20 cars on the street. So it is a problem, and it's a problem we work with, and we work with environmental quality on it. So it hadn't been a major issue, but it's something, it's one of those issues we work through.
Well, I can understand that, but then again, as we know that the way it's being picked up now, different days, now we're talking about on the same date. So I think that might be a problem that may come, sooner than we think it will be.
Right.
Then it will come, I'm sorry.
I don't
So I
think
just
it's-
want
I
to
don't
be
think
sure
it's
that
something
we're
that we-
aware of that.
Well, and I see Mr. Mr. Carroll, kind of agreeing with me. I don't think it's going to be an issue, big enough issue where we can't work through it, so.
Well, I'm sure we can work through it. I just want to make sure that,
yeah.
yeah, just want to make sure that the public is aware of that. Because I do know there'll be some issues concerned like that. I'm sure we will work through it, but I'm just looking at the overall picture of it. Okay, Mr. Chair, that's it.
Mr. Escott, you have the floor.
I was just going to say, Mr. Lewis, in answer to part of your question, but I think your question was answered, but in the contract on the recyclable, there is a provision, I think it's in Article 3, that is, requires the contractor on his truck to carry a broom and some other cleaning cleaning apparatus for any collection. In the process of collection, if there's any debris that falls on the street or whatever, they're to clean that up or pick that up and put it in their truck. So if it's an issue of not overfilling, but rather an issue of dropping trash as they're collecting it, I think the contract addresses that and requires them to pick that up.
Get away, you got. You push your button. Hang on. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Escott, okay, you said for the recycle, but does that pertain to the trash as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Mr. Terrio.
Just a follow-up, I think, on what Mr. Boudreaux was saying. Tom, Mark, whenever the residents have a complaint, just to clarify, they need to contact LCG or Public Works or their council in person, because they shouldn't contact Allied Waste, am I correct? Because Allied Waste, if you look at the scenario, you guys, in order to keep track of any missed pickups or whatever, you guys have to be contacted and notified, because if Allied Waste is called, and I know Bobby and them are very honest, that they're going to call LCG and say, hey, guys, we had 10 phone calls that said, you know, we had missed pickups, so y'all need to make sure and dock us for 10 missed pickups. So who should the residents contact?
If you go contractually, it's at the option of the resident. If they call Republic, the information's going to get back to us. If they call us, we're not quite focused on as many households as they service, so we're going to notify them as quickly. It's very quick. If we get a call at 8 a.m., it's in their inbox at 8:05. So, and again, we stress prompt service and courteous service. So I think, again, it's at the option of the resident. If they have some bulky waste to pick up, the sofa, the chair, and they know if they're week 1, 2, 3, 4, they call Republic. And they say, hi, I'm week 2, which is next week, in April, by the way. I'm week 2 for bulky waste collection. I have a sofa and a bed out in front of my house. Here's my address, please pick me up. It's best to call them. They're going to put it on their list and get their local people out there to pick up that furniture on the week 2 collection. So it has the option. The customer is going to get served either way, but that's how it works, and it works pretty well.
And that's good. I just want to make sure that residents knew they had some options here. Now, also, a per-house missed pickup, which means that you have one resident, that's a missed pickup. They get fined for that, not picking up, right, if it's reported.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you have a line or your street where there are 20 or 30 houses, that's not classified as one pickup. That's classified 20 or 30 houses of missed pickups, right? So
Yes, sir.
it's a fine for each one of the houses,
Once we verify it.
once you verify it.
Once we verify it. With the recycling, because we've been shifting back and forth between recycling and solid waste, we would prefer in this contract that we get the call. The environmental division, I believe, is Lisa here? I believe someone from my recycling office is here. We would prefer that they call the recycling office. That way they get more prompt personal attention.
You want to give that number out, Mr. Pope, at this point?
It's 291-5637.
For the public. So, guys, I know y'all been on your feet a long time, and I want to appreciate y'all for all the information you provided to us. So that's all I have. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. Terrio. No other questions from the council? Blue cards, Ms. Williams.
First, we'll start with 5 citizens who do not wish to speak, but they did sign in opposition to the ordinance. We have 3 citizens who did sign in to speak, the first of which is Michael Walden.
Mr. Walton. Walton.
Hello, I am Mike Walden. I'm a resident of the city of Lafayette. I'd like to first thank you for all your work, the council and the mayor, president, and all the city staff. I know we only get up here and complain, but we really do appreciate what you do. I think Lafayette's the best city. It's the best city I've ever lived in. I'm really happy to be here. And it's a great parish. I'm glad I live in the city and not outside. But we do have some problems, and one is that our fees here seem to be higher than the fees that people are paying in other areas of the parish. And we passed out a copy, which you should have there, that's a copy of a question from the Sierra Club that lists some of the costs in other parts of the parish and the costs that we pay here. So you would expect that in the city of Lafayette, because we have a higher density of housing, we'd pay less money for solid waste, but we seem to pay more. And that's a conundrum that we should address. Also, my background, I'm retired now, but I've worked as a contractor, as an employee of the state of Louisiana, as an employee of the federal government. In the federal government, I worked as a contract administrator and a contracting person, and I've had federal contracting training. And I believe the procedures that are being used here are questionable for setting up this contract. You've gone out for bids for the recycling as a separate item, and by having the recycling as a separate item and then looking at that and comparing it to what the current solid waste contractor could do, you've really set up a system where the current contractor clearly has an advantage in the bid. And that's not a thing you usually want to do. You've, in a sense, given the appearance of rigging the bid for the current contractor for solid waste to also get the recycling contract. Second, you've also proposed to have a 3-year extension with no bids on the current solid waste contract. That's just something you really don't want to do, especially with such a large amount of money of our citizens' money being spent on this. Giving a 3-year extension with no bid on this contract is just not good government. So I would propose that you not extend the current solid waste contract, and I would ask you to do that. And I would ask you to have them go back and look for a recycling contract that would end at the same time as the current solid waste contract. So if you do want to combine those two contracts, if you do want to actually go out for bids and get a contract that's a single contract, which is what you have the appearance of in what you've done here, then you need to wait till the current solid waste contract ends or find a way to get out of it and then bid those two together. But you do need bidding. Bidding is what keeps our prices down in the government. And as much as I used to, when I was working for the government, going through the bidding system was just horrible, but it's an important thing that protects the citizens. And I ask you, please, I'm opposed to this contract as it's set up. I'm opposed to this extension. And you've really got two things in one law here. I'm opposed to both of them. And I hope that you will change that and consider the citizens when you vote.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Greg Gidros.
Mr. Guitros.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. So I am the Director of Environmental Awareness for the Bivermeen District. I myself am not a citizen of Lafayette, but I have given my blood, sweat, and tears to the people of Lafayette and the community for a number of years. So there's a number of things that I'm kind of questionable with this new contract. Well, the first thing, I do like the fact that there's going to be a man station, because oftentimes that station does get clogged up with stuff that is not recyclable. I think it's great that you guys are actually going to have someone man that station. I think that's really important. I think that there might be an opportunity for offering curbside service to non-city residents, but not on a weekly basis. But if you did it on like a bi-weekly basis, that might drop your numbers down and be able to offer curbside recycling to non-city residents at a discounted rate while still bringing recycling to their doorstep. The city of Lafayette is definitely a big metropolitan area, and the outskirts are not so rural anymore. I mean, the rural outskirts of Lafayette are just as city as the city of Lafayette, and you'll probably see a 50% recycle rate within those rural aspects as well, especially if you do offer curbside recycling. I do question the color of the can. I mean, you're gonna have the same color can with a different color lid. What happens when this lid blows off? What happens if this lid is just backwards whenever that truck comes to pick it up? How do we know that the recycling is going into the recycle truck? How do we know that the trash is going into the trash truck? I do understand using the same truck, it makes economical sense. But if you're gonna have a different truck picking up recycling and a different truck picking up trash, then why not have it on a different day? Why do you have to have it on the same day and confuse residents? Our residents, we've worked, I mean, we gave Festival International an accommodation tonight. 16 years ago, Festival International basically started festival recycling in 1999. And we've worked very, very hard to raise the awareness of our community. And nowadays, if you go to a Festival Acadien Creole this past year, I actually wrote a grant for about $10,000 and got some recycle bins for the city of Lafayette. And the amount of waste that was in the recycle bins was non-existent. We had people coming in at 12 midnight, and they were taking bags of cans and plastic out of our recycle dumpster to go sell them. So there is value in that recycle stream. Even though the price of oil is down, what happens when that price of oil goes back up? The commodity market will go back up. And why confuse residents with putting that out on the same day when it's gonna cost the same amount to have a truck and a driver, drive that same route, and pick it up on a different day? If you're doing it on the same day, that's kind of maybe raising some suspicion that it might not be going into the recycle stream. So I definitely question that. Yeah, I mean, recycling, definitely, I'm of course a proponent for it, but definitely want to raise some questions about how the kind of the details of the contract, and just maybe make sure we clarify that is going to become a viable stream, and at some point become a commodity that will become valuable again. I understand the glass, I understand the price of oil influencing the price of plastic, but at the same time, my job as an educator, teaching kids that there's a value in our waste stream, bleeds into other parts of our society, and this is the most important part of teaching our children, that if we can find value in our trash, we can find value in every single one of our members of society. And I think it's very important that we make that distinction clear. And that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Final speaker, Chris Schwest.
Chris Schwest.
Hi, my name is Chris Schwest. I'm a partner in Acadiana Waste Services, which is a locally owned and operated residential and commercial waste collector. Our opposition is on the renewal of the solid waste contract. What it looks like is that the recycling contract at the current price has become uneconomical to do it on a standalone basis. And we kind of discerned that with the RFP process. I think all the prices came back higher than the $2.40. So the only way to make this economical is to couple it with the solid waste. And what that means is that Republic would not be doing this, would not be taking on this contract at the $2.40 unless they could get an extension of the solid waste contract. And so that means that their solid waste contract is pretty lucrative to them, that they're able to absorb the cost of the recycling. And so to not open that process up to a bidding process, I don't think is in the best interests of the residents. I think that if you are going to couple them together, give others an opportunity to bid on that. The RFP was only for the recycling as a standalone. No one else had the opportunity to do an RFP for both the solid waste and the recycling. I think that we could do that, and I think if you opened it up, you would see that you could, on a collective basis, both the recycling and the solid waste, you could see a price decrease, including, and you could see better service. So I believe, and I know you're kind of in a predicament because the recycling contract ends and you got 1 month. And so Republic is the only one right now that's probably capable of putting everything in place. There has been, I guess, a little confusion on my part. I'm not sure if the renewal of the solid waste is for an additional 5 years from 2018 or if it's a 3-year extension so that it would terminate in 2022. At the very least, I would ask that we limit that to as limited, as small as we can. I understand if they're going to take on the recycling contract, they have to, recoup their costs. So, I'm not asking you to they need to have some ability to repay that. But I don't think you need to go out another 5 years from 2018. I think that it can be done with only 3 years. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, any more speakers? Mr. Conk.
Very quickly, the words bid and RFPs have been used interchangeably tonight, and we are not responding to a bid tonight. We are responding to an RFP, and that's important. And as Mr. Escott noted earlier, is that you cannot classify it as a bid because it is a non-exclusive contract. So if we leave tonight with at least one understanding of this contract, this is not based on a bid. This is based on an RFP. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Escott.
I may need to clarify that. Actually, Mr. Conk, this is based not on a public bid. It's also not based on an RFP. It is a negotiated contract with Republic. So, but the reference to the RFP was a prior RFP that was produced and submitted and responded to, all of which responses were rejected, that fell in time-wise shortly before all of this has occurred with these contracts. And so that information is valid, recent, and is likely still valid in terms of what those prices would have been had we done an RFP for this particular contract.
Thank you for the clarification. So tonight, we are voting on a contract that we arrived at through negotiations.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Bear, hang on 1 second. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman brought up a great point about the can's color, the lid flying off. Is this appropriate to have them address that? Because I'm curious about that as well. Or are we past that? Can we still do that? I can do whatever I want.
You can do whatever you want.
Bobby, can you answer that question for me? I thought that was a great point of the can color, because I was under the assumption it was going to be 2 different colors, but.
Well, Because of the, I actually have a brochure I can share with you, but it actually shows 4 different processes that we have across the country at different places that actually use blue lid is the same cart, blue lid for trash, light blue for recyclables, brown for yard waste, and black for organics. So if you want to extend it beyond recycling, you have the opportunity to do so. As far as the lids coming off and flying off, those are going to be replaced just like a solid waste right now. If the carts are damaged, we'll send someone out to repair or replace it at no charge to the residents. So that's not an issue. The aesthetics of the carts being the same carts, when you look down the street, you're going to see all the same colored carts. It's going to be one consistent cart. The lid, because of the service, the driver being elevated, can see the different color lids. Whether the lid is blown open or not, he's going to see it's a light blue lid. It's going to be attached. If it's not attached, then it's a problem. We can either the resident will report it, or we'll try to make note of it and report it, and we'll repair or replace those carts.
Okay, thank you. That'll be all.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Combs?
One last question, Bobby. You mentioned a separate container for a yard of debris. Will you continue to pick up bags that are not within the container? Suppose on a busy weekend we generate more bags.
Yard waste. The yard waste is going to be continued to pick up just like it is. It doesn't have any impact on the way solid waste services are provided. Solid waste services are going to continue to be provided the same way, utilizing a 96-gallon quart, separate yard waste collection, which is bagged yard waste or limbs cut to certain requirements, and bulky waste, which is old furniture, mattresses, that's going to be collected separately, and then white goods. There's no change in the services, the scope of services.
Okay, thank you. And one question for Tom. What's going to happen to the existing recycling bins? What's the arrangement with the current provider?
The provider can pick them up at the end of termination of the contract.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll, 1 second. I had a question. I think I'm the only one that didn't talk tonight. That's unusual. If at the end of that contract, May 1st is when it's up, and they have that existing cart, and they don't pick it up, and they say, look, it's your cart, do what you want with it, what happens?
And I presume the resident can use it for whatever they want. Personally, if I still have it, I'd go use it for my yard waste. Republic?
He has too many names. He wears too many hats.
We're only going to service the carts that we deliver, which are Republic Services carts. As far as the contracts being replaced with existing carts, I'll give you the example of Scott. When we took over Scott with automated carts, we delivered our carts, and the contract at the time, which happened to be Progressive, originally was Sweetie. They were bought out by Progressive, and Progressive picked up their carts. So the expectation is that the contractor leaving is going to pick up their carts. That's quite a bit of assets that I don't think a company is going to leave those assets out on the street.
That's an expectation.
It's an expectation that they remove their carts. But we are not going to make it clear, we are not going to service those carts because they're not our cart. The first time we try to service a cart, they're going to say, well, we damaged 20,000 carts.
And I'm asking about yard waste. If they put
Yard waste, no, there's a limit to the size of the container that you can use for yard waste.
50 gallon?
35, more.
35, yes, 35 gallons.
35.
Yeah.
35-gallon containers.
So, Tom, you can't use it for yard
I can't
waste.
use that for yard.
It's too large for a manual collection. Again, that yard waste is a manual collection service, so.
Okay, I just think you guys might need to think about that just in case.
Yeah, they're going to have to, that's an issue that's been discussed. Mark and I actually have talked about that, and it's an issue that's going to have to be discussed with the current contractor, but it's a common practice, so it's not an issue that can't be overcome.
Okay. Mr. Boudreaux, you have the floor.
Tom, tonight I think we introduced about 4 annexations, which will now be City of Lafayette residents. What is the process to notify the contractor for those people to receive service? I think Nanette had brought up the gentleman who spoke brought up the issue about how what is now unincorporated is getting dense, then of course, it's almost like city living. So as we do these annexations, what is our process? Notifying the contractor, these are now city residents,
30
they
days.
eligible for that service?
Within 30 days of annexation.
Okay,
Service
and
will
we,
commence.
so there is a notification process in place from the department to the contractor?
Yes, sir.
Of those annexations? Okay, all right. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any more council discussion on this item? Seeing none, and we're out of blue cards?
Yes, sir.
Nobody else wants to talk? Okay, let's call a roll.
District 3?
Yes.
4?
Yes.
District 5? District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
No.
District 1?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, Liz. No further business tonight. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.